They say that wild horses only approach humans when something deeper than instinct calls them forward. In the Wyoming wilderness, where autumn paints the mountains gold and shadows hold ancient secrets, a black horse with eyes as green as forest moss appears to those who have given up on life itself. Some believe it's just a legend, a wild Mustang that mysteriously shows up when Callaway men reach their breaking point. But for Ethan, a battle-worn Navy SEAL haunted by the ghosts of his fallen brothers, the appearance of Shadow at his darkest hour will open the doorway to painful truths buried across generations. What begins as an inheritance of a broken-down ranch becomes a spiritual reckoning with two hidden massacres guarded by a horse that cannot die, a guardian spirit that might be the key to Ethan's salvation or his final undoing. The autumn wind swept across Wyoming's open plains, carrying the scent of pine and approaching snow. Echo Ridge Ranch stood against the backdrop of distant mountains, a silhouette of what it once was. Weathered fence posts leaned at irregular angles, their white paint long peeled away. The barn roof sagged in the middle tall grass, overtaking pathways that had once been neatly maintained. Time had abandoned this place just as its people had. Ethan Callaway stood on the porch of what was now his grandfather's empty house, a duffel bag at his feet. His military posture remained despite the civilian clothes, jeans, boots, and a worn leather jacket that hung loosely on his frame. 6 months of barely eating would do that to a man. They called it survivor's guilt, those doctors at the VA. Ethan called it justice. He had no right to eat well, sleep well, or live well while his unit lay in the ground. He reached for the key under the ceramic turtle, exactly where it had been since his childhood visits. Some things never changed even when everything else did. The door creaked open to reveal a home preserved in time. Dust particles danced in the beam of fading sunlight that cut through the living room window. The air was stale, untouched for months since Jack Callaway's passing. Photographs lined the mantel, moments Ethan barely recognized from his own life. His grandfather in military uniform, his mother as a child, himself at graduation before he enlisted. Strangers, now all of them. Ethan moved to the kitchen, his footsteps echoing through the empty house. He placed his bag on the counter, removed a bottle of whiskey, and poured a generous amount into a dusty glass he found in the cabinet. "To you, old man," he muttered, raising the glass in a hollow toast before downing its contents. The liquor burned familiarly, promising the same temporary relief it always had. It wasn't enough. It had never been enough to drown the screams that haunted his dreams, the faces of his men in their final moments, before the IED detonated, shredding them to pieces while somehow leaving him intact enough to watch them die. His hand moved to the inner pocket of his jacket, fingers brushing against the orange prescription bottle. The pills were meant for sleep, but enough of them would bring a different kind of peace. Permanent. 3 times he'd tried. 3 times he'd failed. Something always stopped him. The promise he'd made to return his team's ashes to their families. A task now complete, leaving him without purpose, without anchor. Ethan twisted the cap off the bottle, tapped several pills into his palm. More than enough this time. He filled his glass with whiskey again. A chaser for eternity. "Forgive me," he whispered to the empty room, to the ghosts of his men who followed him everywhere. He raised the pills to his mouth, then froze. There, through the kitchen window, a pair of eyes watched him. Green eyes, luminous in the gathering dusk. Piercing. Knowing. A horse stood at the broken fence line. Coat black as midnight, with a distinctive white lightning-shaped marking on its forehead. It didn't move, didn't graze or shift nervously like normal horses would. It simply watched. The pills trembled in Ethan's palm. Those eyes seemed to look through him, past the flesh and bone, to something deeper. Judging. Waiting. Without conscious thought, Ethan lowered his hand. The horse remained motionless, its gaze unwavering. "What do you want?" Ethan muttered, setting down his glass. The horse blinked once slowly, then turned its head toward the forest that bordered the western edge of the property, before looking back at Ethan. Ethan moved to the window for a better view. No saddle, no bridle, no signs of human handling. A wild Mustang, then. But wild horses didn't approach human dwellings. They certainly didn't stare at strangers through kitchen windows. Something about those eyes tugged at his memory. Had his grandfather mentioned a black horse in one of his letters? Ethan couldn't recall. The correspondence had been one-sided for years. Jack writing faithfully, Ethan rarely responding. The horse snorted breath visible in the cooling air, then took a step back from the fence. Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking the strange moment. The horse startled, trotting several paces away, but not fleeing. The screen displayed an unfamiliar local number. Ethan nearly declined it, but answered at the last moment. "Mr. Calloway, this is Martin Wheeler, your grandfather's attorney. I understand you've arrived in town." Ethan glanced back at the window. The horse was gone. "Just got here," he confirmed. "Excellent. We need to discuss Jack's will as soon as possible. There are conditions to your inheritance that require immediate attention. Could you come to my office tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock? Ethan had planned to sign whatever papers necessary to sell the property and be gone by tomorrow afternoon. "Fine. Good. And Mr. Calloway, Jack left something specific for you. A letter. He was quite insistent you receive it upon arrival." Ethan's jaw tightened. More words from beyond the grave. "I'll be there." He ended the call, returned to his whiskey, and stared at the pills still in his palm. The strange encounter with the horse had disrupted his momentum, left him feeling oddly watched. The pills went back into the bottle. Not tonight. Ethan slept on the couch, unwilling to claim his grandfather's bed or clear out the guest room filled with storage boxes. His sleep was thin, pierced by the usual nightmares. Explosions, screams, accusations from dead men with missing limbs and burned faces. He woke with dawn, drenched in cold sweat, heart pounding against his ribs. Outside, a heavy fog had settled over Echo Ridge, shrouding the fields in ghostly white. Ethan made coffee, carried it to the porch, and watched the mist slowly lift as the sun climbed higher. No sign of the Black Horse. The law office of Wheeler & Sons occupied a modest brick building on Unity Valley's main street. The town was smaller than Ethan remembered. A single traffic light, a diner, a hardware store, and a handful of other businesses fighting against economic decline. Martin Wheeler was a balding man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses and a firm handshake. His office smelled of old paper and furniture polish. "Your grandfather was a good man," Wheeler said, settling behind his desk. "Served this community for decades after his military service." Ethan nodded stiffly, uninterested in eulogies. "The will?" Wheeler's expression tightened slightly at Ethan's brusqueness. "Yes, well, Jack left Echo Ridge to you as his sole living heir. I'll need the paperwork to list it with a realtor." Wheeler raised a hand. "I'm afraid it's not that simple. There are conditions attached to your inheritance." Ethan's jaw clenched. "What conditions?" The attorney opened a folder, removed a document, and slid it across the desk. "The property cannot be sold for 1 year from the date of transfer to you. During that time, you must locate a specific item, a metal box Jack entrusted to his friend Raymond Hayes. Hayes never heard of him. He was in your grandfather's unit in Vietnam. According to Jack, Hayes possesses crucial information about the Calloway family legacy." Ethan scoffed. "Legacy? The ranch is falling apart. There is no legacy." Wheeler's expression remained neutral. "Nevertheless, these are the conditions. If you refuse, the property goes to the Unity Valley Historical Society." Ethan leaned back, calculating. A year. 12 months trapped in this forgotten corner of Wyoming with nothing but memories and nightmares for company. And if this Hayes character is dead, or the box doesn't exist, Jack anticipated that possibility. "There's a letter for you that might provide answers." Wheeler opened his desk drawer and removed a sealed envelope yellowed with age. Ethan's name was written on the front in his grandfather's precise handwriting. Ethan took it reluctantly, feeling its weight, physical and otherwise. He slipped it into his jacket without opening it. "Is that all?" Wheeler hesitated. "There's one more thing. The property taxes are significantly in arrears. Jack took out loans in recent years that he struggled to repay. The bank has been patient due to his standing in the community, but they won't wait forever." Perfect. Financial problems on top of everything else. "How much time do I have?" 6 months, perhaps less. "Mayor Collins has expressed interest in purchasing the land for a resort development. It would bring jobs to Unity Valley. Perhaps after your required year." "I'll figure something out." Ethan cut him off, standing abruptly. "Is there anything else I need to sign today?" 20 minutes later, Ethan emerged from the law office with a folder of documents and a headache forming behind his eyes. He stood on the sidewalk, observing the quiet town that had barely changed since his youth. A few people glanced his way. The returning grandson of Jack Calloway was apparently noteworthy in a place this small. He needed supplies if he was staying even temporarily. The general store across the street would do. The bell jangled as Ethan entered Carson's general store, a cramped space crammed with everything from canned goods to fishing tackle. A middle-aged woman with graying red hair looked up from the counter. "You must be Jack's grandson," she said, smiling. "I'm Margaret Carson. My husband and your grandfather served on the town council together for years." Ethan nodded uncomfortably. "Just need some basics. Food cleaning supplies." "Of course." Her smile dimmed slightly at his curtness. "Let me know if you need help finding anything." Ethan gathered what he needed quickly, avoiding further conversation. As he approached the counter to pay, the store door opened behind him. The atmosphere in the room immediately shifted. "Mr. Collins." Margaret greeted, her tone notably cooler. Ethan turned to see a well-dressed man in his 50s entering the store. His tailored coat and polished shoes stood out in the rustic surroundings. "Mrs. Carson," the man replied with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. His gaze shifted to Ethan. "And you must be Ethan Calloway, Robert Collins, mayor of Unity Valley. Your grandfather was a dear friend." He extended his hand. Ethan took it briefly, noting the firm grip designed to impress. "Sorry for your loss," Collins continued. "Jack was a town institution, stubborn as they come, though." "Runs in the family," Ethan replied. Collins chuckled. "So I've heard. I understand you've met with Martin this morning about the inheritance. I hope everything is in order." The question seemed casual, but Ethan sensed something beneath it. Eagerness, perhaps. "All sorted," Ethan said vaguely. "Excellent. I'd like to discuss the future of Echo Ridge with you sometime. The property has tremendous potential that Jack never fully realized. My office is just down the street. Stop by anytime." Ethan nodded noncommittally. Collins turned to Margaret. "Just came in from my usual Margaret." While the mayor was occupied, Ethan paid for his supplies and left, feeling Collins' eyes on his back as he exited. Outside, Ethan loaded the groceries into his truck. Something about Collins set off his internal alarms, the same sense that had kept him alive in war zones. Too smooth, too interested in a dilapidated ranch. Ethan's gaze drifted across the street and froze. There, between two buildings, stood the Black Horse. Impossible. They were in the middle of town. Yet there it was, its green eyes fixed directly on him. A truck passed, momentarily blocking his view. When it cleared, the horse was gone. Ethan rubbed his eyes. Lack of sleep, stress, grief. Any could cause hallucinations. But it had seemed so real. Back at Echo Ridge, Ethan unloaded his supplies and finally turned his attention to his grandfather's letter. He sat at the kitchen table, broke the seal, and unfolded the brittle paper. "Ethan, if you're reading this, I've passed on and you've returned to Echo Ridge. I always knew you would, even when you tried so hard to stay away. I don't blame you. War changes us in ways civilians can never understand. It hollows you out, leaves you a shell of who you were. I know because I lived it after Vietnam. There are things I should have told you years ago, about our family, about what happened in Khe Sanh, about the path that brought the Callaways to Echo Ridge. But some truths can only be understood when you're ready to hear them. You must find the path our souls have lost. When you see its eyes, you'll understand. The metal box Raymond Hayes guards contains the full truth. Finding it won't be easy. Raymond disappeared 20 years ago after threats were made. But he's alive. The horse will know. Trust what you see, even when it defies explanation. Some spirits cross generations to heal the wounds that time cannot. All my love." Jack Ethan read the letter twice, then set it down with a frustrated sigh. Cryptic nonsense. The horse spirits crossing generations. His grandfather had clearly lost his mind in his final years, yet the black horse with green eyes had appeared. Twice now. Ethan folded the letter and slipped it back into the envelope. A coincidence, nothing more. Wild horses roamed Wyoming. This one had simply wandered closer to human habitation than most. The remainder of the day passed in physical labor as Ethan assessed the ranch's condition. The house was structurally sound but needed repairs. The barn was worse. Roof damage, support beams rotting in places. The fences would need to be completely replaced if animals were to be kept again. Not that Ethan planned to stay long enough for that. He would fulfill the minimum requirements of the will, find this mysterious box, then sell the place the moment the year was up. As twilight approached, Ethan sat on the porch with another glass of whiskey, watching darkness claim the land. No sign of the black horse all day. His phone rang, an unknown number again. "Calloway," he answered. "Mr. Calloway, this is Sheriff Davis from Unity Valley. There's been an incident at your property." Ethan straightened. "What kind of incident?" "A neighbor reported seeing vehicles and flashlights near your north pasture about 20 minutes ago. I'm heading out to investigate now, but it'll take me about 15 minutes to reach you." "I'll check it out myself," Ethan said, already moving inside for his jacket. "I'd advise waiting for—" Ethan ended the call. In the coat closet, he found what he was looking for. His grandfather's old shotgun. He checked that it was loaded, then headed out into the darkness. The north pasture lay beyond the barn, bordered by the forest on one side and a creek on the other. Ethan moved silently, combat instincts resurfacing automatically. No flashlights visible now, but he could hear the low rumble of engines. He crested a small rise and dropped immediately to a crouch. 3 pickup trucks were parked near the old equipment shed. Flashlight beams bounced around the structure as dark figures moved purposefully. One beam illuminated a gas can being carried toward the wooden shed. Arson. They were going to burn it down. Ethan assessed quickly. At least 5 men, possibly armed. Bad odds even with his training. The smart play was to wait for the sheriff. A strange nickering sound came from behind him. Ethan turned sharply, raising the shotgun. The black horse stood 10 feet away, its coat nearly invisible in the darkness, except for the white lightning mark that seemed to glow in the moonlight. Its green eyes reflected the distant flashlights. "Get out of here," Ethan whispered harshly. The horse didn't move, but looked pointedly toward the men, then back at Ethan. Below, one of the men shouted, "Hurry up, Sheriff could be here any minute." "Just leave enough evidence to make it look like the veteran offed himself," another voice replied. "Collins says make it convincing." Collins, the mayor. This was about the land. Anger flared in Ethan's chest, hot and unexpected. This place might mean nothing to him, but it had been his grandfather's life. These men were desecrating that memory on the mayor's orders. The horse pawed the ground impatiently, drawing Ethan's attention again. It took several steps toward the men, then looked back at Ethan expectantly, without fully understanding why Ethan followed. Instead of charging directly at the intruders, the horse led Ethan along the tree line, approaching from a different angle. They reached the edge of the clearing where the men worked. 2 were now splashing gasoline around the shed's foundation, while another placed what looked like empty liquor bottles near the entrance. A 4th man stood, watch rifle in hand, scanning the darkness. The black horse suddenly bolted forward directly at the men. "What the—" The lookout shouted, raising his rifle. The horse charged with supernatural speed, rearing up before the stunned man. Hooves flashed in the moonlight as they struck his shoulder, sending him crashing to the ground. The others turned in confusion, reaching for weapons. Something awoke in Ethan then. Not fear, not caution, but a primal protective instinct he'd thought died with his unit. He stepped from the shadows, shotgun raised. "Drop your weapons!" He commanded, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had ordered others in life-or-death situations. 2 men immediately complied. A 3rd reached for a handgun at his waistband. Ethan fired the shotgun into the air. The blast echoed across the pasture like thunder. "Next one won't miss." The black horse circled the men's eyes, flashing dangerously in the darkness. It was eerily calm for the situation, moving with deliberate precision rather than panic. "Collins sent you," Ethan demanded. None answered, but their exchanged glances confirmed it. "Tell your boss that Echo Ridge isn't for sale. Not now, not ever." In the distance, sirens wailed, growing louder. "Get out," Ethan ordered. "Leave the gas cans." The men retreated to their trucks, dragging their injured companion. Engines roared to life, and they sped away across the pasture, toward a back road, disappearing into the night seconds before the sheriff's cruiser appeared at the main entrance to the property. Ethan lowered the shotgun, adrenaline still coursing through his system. For the first time in years, he felt something. Not happiness, not peace, but purpose. Clarity. The black horse approached him slowly, ears forward, green eyes studying him intently. "What are you?" Ethan whispered. The horse snorted, softly turned and trotted toward the forest edge. At the tree line, it stopped, looking back at Ethan with unmistakable expectation. Ethan glanced toward the approaching sheriff's vehicle, then back at the horse. You want me to follow you? He stated rather than asked. Now, the horse tossed its head once pawed the ground, then took several steps into the forest, stopping again to ensure Ethan watched. Sheriff Davis's cruiser pulled up to the shed spotlight sweeping the area. The officer would have questions. There were statements to make, reports to file. But something in those green eyes called to Ethan. The same something that had stopped him from taking those pills last night. His grandfather's words echoed. When you see its eyes, you'll understand. The horse will know. Decision made, Ethan laid the shotgun carefully on the ground where the sheriff would find it, along with the abandoned gas cans. Evidence of what had nearly happened. Then he turned and walked into the forest following the black horse that somehow knew exactly where he needed to go. The forest embraced them in darkness, broken only by shafts of moonlight penetrating the canopy. The horse moved confidently through the undergrowth, occasionally pausing to ensure Ethan followed. They were ascending, gradually moving deeper into the wilderness that bordered Echo Ridge. Ethan's military training kept him oriented despite the darkness. His mind raced with questions, but some strange calm had settled over him. A certainty that this moment, however inexplicable, was necessary. Shadow, Ethan said, suddenly, the name coming to him unbidden. The horse's ears flicked back at the sound head, turning slightly in acknowledgement. That's what I'll call you, Shadow. The newly named Shadow continued leading Ethan through the forest for nearly an hour. The terrain grew steeper, more challenging. Ethan's breath clouded in the cold night air as sweat cooled against his skin. They crested a ridge and descended into a small sheltered valley. In the center, barely visible in the moonlight, stood a cabin. Its log walls were darkened by weather and time, the porch sagging dangerously on one side. Shadow stopped at the edge of the small clearing, watching Ethan with those unsettling green eyes. Ethan approached the cabin, cautiously, military instincts on high alert. The structure appeared abandoned. No smoke from the chimney, no light in the windows. But as he drew nearer, he detected the faintest flickering of firelight through the grimy glass. Someone was inside. He paused, glancing back at Shadow. The horse remained motionless, like a sentinel guarding the approach. Ethan moved to the door, noted the worn handle, the years of weathering. He knocked firmly. Silence. He knocked again, harder. Hello, anyone in there? A weak voice finally responded from within. Who's there? My name is Ethan Calloway, Jack Calloway's grandson. A long pause followed, then the sound of movement, slow, labored footsteps approaching the door. Locks clicked, and the door opened a crack, revealing a sliver of a gaunt face and one wary eye. Prove it, the man demanded, voice raspy with age or illness. I don't have ID on me, Ethan replied. I followed a black horse here, a horse with green eyes. The eye widened and the door opened further. An elderly man stood revealed, leaning heavily on a walking stick. He was thin to the point of emaciation, white hair, wild and unkempt clothes hanging from his frame. But his eyes were sharp, intelligent, despite the illness evident in every other feature. Shadow brought you, he stated, not a question, but a confirmation. His gaze moved past Ethan to where the horse stood watching. Just like Jack said you would come when it was time. Who are you? Ethan asked. Michael Winters. Your grandfather saved my life in '68. The old man extended a trembling hand. You'd better come inside, son. We have much to discuss, and my time grows short. Tsunam. Ethan took the offered hand, shocked by its paper-thin skin and fragile bones. He helped Michael back into the cabin, pulling the door closed behind them. The interior was Spartan, a small wood stove providing minimal heat and light, a cot with rumpled blankets, a crude table with a single chair. Medications lined a shelf, their labels faded and worn. How long have you been out here? Ethan asked, lowering Michael onto the cot. Years now, since your grandfather got sick. Michael's breathing was labored, each word an effort. He used to check on me, bring supplies. Guilt washed over Ethan. Jack had been making this difficult journey even as his own health failed, while Ethan had barely managed to call on holidays. You're ill. You need a hospital. Michael shook his head firmly. No hospitals. Seen enough of them to last several lifetimes. He fixed Ethan with a penetrating stare. Shadow brought you. That means it's time. Time for what? For you to learn the truth. About Echo Ridge. About Khe-Sanh. about what your grandfather and I did and what we couldn't undo. Michael's gaze drifted to a loose floorboard beside the cot. Under there, Jack's journal. He left it for you to find when Shadow deemed you ready. Ethan knelt and pried up the indicated board. In the space beneath lay a leather-bound journal, its cover cracked with aged pages yellowed and brittle. Read it, Michael urged. Start with June 15th, 1968, the day everything changed. Ethan opened the journal carefully, finding the date. His grandfather's handwriting was neat, precise, the penmanship of a different generation. June 15th, 1968. Rice paddy outside Quezon. Lost Williams and Rodriguez today. Michael says I couldn't have saved them. Don't believe him. The blood won't wash off no matter how hard I scrub. Ethan looked up at Michael, who nodded gravely. Keep reading, the old man whispered. All of it. Then you'll understand why Shadow has come for you. Why the Calloway men are never allowed to surrender to their darkness. Outside, Shadow remained at his post, green eyes reflecting the pale moonlight, watching over the cabin where the past and present were about to collide. Retry NNOK, next part, 5,000 to edit. The journal's pages turned beneath Ethan's fingers, each one revealing another piece of his grandfather's hidden life. The handwriting sometimes steady, sometimes jagged with emotion, a map of Jack Calloway's soul laid bare. November 3rd, 1968, Quezon. The village was supposed to be evacuated. Intelligence was wrong, so wrong. The children's faces. I can't write about this yet. Maybe never. Michael says we need to forgive ourselves, but I don't know if that's possible. Ethan read through the night, barely noticing, as darkness gave way to dawn's first light, filtering through the cabin's dirty windows. Michael had fallen asleep on the cot, his breathing worryingly shallow. The journal told a story of 4 men bound by combat: Jack Calloway, Michael Winters, Frank Morgan, and Raymond Hayes. They'd survived the hell of Vietnam only to discover that some battlefields follow soldiers home. May 17th, 1972. Echo Ridge. Saw the horse again today. Same black coat, same green eyes. It appeared on the ridge just as I was contemplating the pistol. One moment nothing was there. Then it stood watching me. When I approached, it vanished like morning mist. Am I losing my mind, or is something else at work here? Michael says he saw it too the day before he met Sarah. Frank thinks we're crazy. Raymond remains silent on the matter, but his eyes betray him. He's seen it as well. Ethan closed the journal, his mind reeling. The entries continued through the decades, documenting his grandfather's struggles with PTSD, the brotherhood of the 4 men, and recurring appearances of the mysterious black horse they called Shadow. According to Jack, the horse only appeared to Calloway men in moments of crisis or imminent change, a guardian spirit of sorts, though Jack never fully embraced supernatural explanations. Michael stirred, coughing violently. Ethan moved to help him sit up, disturbed by the rattling sound in the old man's chest. You need medical attention, Ethan insisted, supporting Michael's frail frame. Did you finish? Michael asked, ignoring Ethan's concern. Yes, but it raises more questions than it answers. Michael nodded weakly. Your grandfather was a complicated man. We all were after what happened at Quezon. The village, Ethan said. The journal mentioned a mistake, civilian casualties. Sulfur of pain flashed across Michael's face. We were ordered to secure a village supposedly evacuated of civilians. But intelligence was wrong. When we entered, families were still there. He paused, gaze distant with memory. Someone panicked, started shooting. The rest followed. His eyes refocused on Ethan. 17 civilians died that day. Women, children. Your grandfather tried to stop it, carried 2 children to safety under fire. But the others? Why isn't this in any official records? The army buried it, called it a Viet Cong attack. Michael's hands trembled. Raymond was our communications specialist. He intercepted the orders to cover it up, orders that came directly from Colonel James Collins. The name jolted Ethan. Collins. Any relation to the current mayor? His father. Michael's gaze was sharp despite his illness. That's why Raymond disappeared. He kept evidence, recordings, documents proving the cover-up. When young Robert Collins ran for state office 20 years ago, Raymond threatened to expose everything unless Collins withdrew. And he did, yes, but it made him an enemy for life. Collins has been searching for Raymond ever since, wanting to destroy any evidence before making another political run. The pieces were falling into place. The mayor's interest in Echo Ridge suddenly made twisted sense. The metal box my grandfather mentioned in his will, Ethan said. It contains this evidence. Michael nodded. Raymond entrusted it to Jack before he went into hiding. Your grandfather hid it somewhere on Echo Ridge, somewhere only a Calloway could find. And you don't know where? No. Jack said Shadow would show you when the time was right. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration mounting. A horse is supposed to lead me to a hidden box containing evidence of war crimes committed 50 years ago. Not just any horse, Michael said softly. What is it then? Michael's gaze drifted to the cabin window. Outside, Shadow stood exactly where he'd been all night, motionless despite the hours that had passed. The Hmong villagers in Kayasan had a belief. When a warrior dies with unfinished business, their spirit can take animal form to guide the living. Michael's voice strengthened with conviction. The night of the massacre, as we were retreating, a Hmong elder was dying. He grabbed Jack's arm, said something none of us understood except Raymond, who knew some of their language. What did he say? That a black spirit horse would follow Jack's bloodline until the truth was honored. At the time, we thought it was delirium or a curse. Michael's eyes glistened with unshed tears. But then we started seeing it, always at crucial moments, always when one of us was close to giving up. Ethan wanted to dismiss it as the ramblings of a sick old man, yet Shadow's appearance and the timing of it defied rational explanation. I need to get you to a hospital, Ethan said, changing the subject. Can you walk at all? Michael shook his head. Not far, but there's an old ATV trail half a mile east. Emergency services have used it before. I'll go back to the ranch, call for help. No. Michael's hand shot out, gripping Ethan's wrist with surprising strength. First, you must find Frank. He's in the Valley View Care Center in town. His mind wanders, but he has moments of clarity. He knows more about Raymond's current location than he lets on. I'll find him after you're safe. Michael's grip tightened. Promise me, Raymond is in danger. Collins knows you're back, knows about the will. He'll accelerate his plans. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. I promise. Outside, Shadow watched as Ethan helped Michael onto the porch. The horse approached cautiously, stopping a few feet away, nostrils flaring as it assessed Michael's condition. Hello, old friend, Michael said weakly. Still watching over us, I see. Shadow nickered softly, almost a response. I need to go for help, Ethan told Michael. Will you be all right alone for a few hours? I've survived worse situations. Michael settled onto a weathered chair. Shadow will keep me company. As if understanding, the horse moved closer to the porch, taking up a position where it could watch both Michael and the surrounding forest. Ethan marked the location on his phone's GPS, then set off back through the forest toward Echo Ridge. His mind churned with everything he'd learned, the massacre, the cover-up, his grandfather's guilt, and the inexplicable presence of Shadow. Was it truly possible, a spirit guide passing through generations? He thought of his own darkness, how close he'd come to ending his life, and how Shadow's appearance had stopped him. Coincidence seemed increasingly inadequate as an explanation. Echo Ridge came into view as Ethan emerged from the forest. Sheriff Davis's cruiser was parked near the house alongside another official vehicle. Ethan approached cautiously. Davis spotted him immediately, rising from where he sat on the porch steps. Calloway, where the hell have you been? We've had search parties looking for you since last night. Found an injured man in the forest, Ethan replied, keeping details minimal. Michael Winters, former military, served with my grandfather. He needs medical attention, cabin about 4 miles northwest, accessible by the old fire trail. Davis's expression shifted from anger to concern. Michael Winters' people thought he died years ago. Very much alive, but not for long without help. Severe respiratory infection, malnutrition. The sheriff reached for his radio. I'll coordinate with search and rescue. They can bring him out on a stretcher. He studied Ethan's face. What were you doing in the forest in the middle of the night? Ethan considered his options. The truth seemed inadvisable. Heard something, went to investigate, got turned around in the dark. Oh. Davis clearly didn't believe him, but had more pressing concerns. Those men who were here last night, you know who they were? No, but I know who sent them. That's a serious accusation. Check the gas cans for fingerprints. I heard them mention Collins by name. The sheriff's jaw tightened. I'll look into it, but tread carefully with accusations against the mayor. He has significant influence in this county. Awifum. While Davis coordinated the rescue operation, Ethan entered the house to shower and change. His muscles ached from the night's exertion, but his mind felt unusually clear. For the first time since Afghanistan, he had purpose protect Michael find Frank, locate Raymond, and the evidence expose Collins. The clarity was both welcome and terrifying. An hour later, Ethan drove into Unity Valley, heading for the Valley View Care Center. The facility was a single-story building on the outskirts of town, its beige exterior softened by well-maintained gardens. At the reception desk, Ethan identified himself as Jack Calloway's grandson. The middle-aged receptionist brightened immediately. Oh, Mr. Calloway used to visit every Thursday, brought fresh baked goods for everyone. Such a lovely man. Another piece of his grandfather Ethan had never known. I'd like to see Frank Morgan, please. Her smile faded slightly. Mr. Morgan has been having a difficult week. Sometimes he doesn't recognize visitors. I understand. It's important that I speak with him, even briefly. She hesitated, then nodded. Room 112 down the hall on the right. If he becomes agitated, please use the call button. Frank Morgan's room was small, but comfortable, brightened by landscape paintings and a window overlooking a courtyard. The man himself sat in a wheelchair by the window, staring at nothing in particular. He was thin-bald except for wispy white hair above his ears, hands spotted with age. Mr. Morgan, Ethan said softly. I'm Ethan Calloway, Jack's grandson. Frank turned slowly, roomy eyes narrowing as they focused on Ethan's face. For a moment there was no recognition, then something shifted in his expression. Calloway, he repeated. You look like him. The jaw, the eyes. He motioned Ethan closer. Jack sent you. In a way. Ethan pulled a chair beside Frank. I've spoken with Michael Winters. Frank's eyes widened. Michael, he's alive. Yes, but ill. I found him in a cabin in the forest. Shadow led you there, Frank stated with surprising certainty. You know about Shadow? Frank chuckled, a wet sound deep in his chest. The black horse with devil-green eyes. Oh yes, appeared to me on Cooper's Ridge in '72 when I had a pistol in my mouth. Wouldn't move, wouldn't let me step off that cliff no matter which way I turned. He studied Ethan. It's found you too, hasn't it? Because you were ready to end it all. Ethan didn't answer, but his silence was confirmation enough. 3 times I tried. Frank continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. 3 times that damn horse stopped me. Finally got the message some debts can't be paid with your life. Ethan felt a chill at the echo of his own experience. I need to find Raymond Hayes. Michael thinks you might know where he is. Frank's gaze darted around the room, suddenly suspicious. Who else knows you're looking? No one. Collins has spies everywhere. Nurse, orderly, gardener, never know who's listening. I need to find him, Mr. Morgan. Lives depend on it. Frank leaned forward, dropping his voice further. I don't know exactly. Raymond moves around, but there's a woman who helps him, Olivia Bennett. Veterinarian. Works with wild horses up at Thunder Basin. Raymond trusts her. His cabin's somewhere in that area. Why would a veterinarian help Raymond hide? She's my granddaughter. Frank said, a hint of pride breaking through his paranoia. Never told her everything, but enough to keep Raymond safe. The door opened before Ethan could respond. A nurse entered with a tray of medications. Time for your pills, Mr. Morgan, she said cheerfully. Oh, you have a visitor. How nice. Frank's demeanor changed instantly, his momentary lucidity dissolving. He blinked at Ethan in confusion. Have we met? Are you the new orderly? Ethan stood, recognizing the window of clarity had closed. Just a friend. I'll come back another time. The nurse smiled sympathetically. That happens, I'm afraid. Some days are better than others. As Ethan left, Frank called after him, one moment of clarity breaking through the fog. Trust the horse, Calloway. It knows the way. Outside the care center, Ethan researched Olivia Bennett on his phone. Thunder Basin Wild Horse Veterinary Clinic appeared in the search results, located about 30 miles north of Unity Valley. He was about to leave when his phone rang. Sheriff Davis. Calloway, we've got Michael Winters at Mercy Hospital. Doctor says it's severe pneumonia, dehydration, malnutrition. Will he make it? Too soon to tell. He's asking for you, though. Says it's urgent. On my way. At Mercy Hospital, Ethan found Michael in the ICU, oxygen mask covering most of his face, surrounded by beeping machines. Despite the medical intervention, the old man looked worse than he had in the cabin, skin gray eyes sunken. Michael, Ethan said, approaching the bed. It's Ethan. Michael's eyes fluttered open, focusing with difficulty. His hand emerged from beneath the blanket, gesturing weakly for Ethan to come closer. When Ethan leaned in, Michael pulled the oxygen mask aside briefly. Collins knows, he whispered hoarsely. Nurse mentioned your name. His men were here, asking questions. Ethan's blood ran cold. Rest. I'll handle Collins. Michael replaced his mask, breathing labored, despite the supplemental oxygen. He fumbled beneath his blanket, eventually extracting a small tarnished key, which he pressed into Ethan's palm. Raymond's fail-safe, he managed through the mask. Under floorboards, my cabin, another journal. A nurse entered, frowning at Michael's elevated heart rate on the monitor. You need to leave, she told Ethan firmly. He needs rest. Ethan squeezed Michael's hand, once pocketed the key, and left mind racing. If Collins knew about Michael, he might already be moving against Raymond. In the hospital parking lot, Ethan weighed his options. Return to Michael's cabin for the second journal, or head directly to Thunder Basin to find Olivia Bennett. The decision was made for him when he spotted a black SUV with tinted windows parked across the street, two men inside watching the hospital entrance. Collins's men, almost certainly. Ethan walked calmly to his truck, got in and drove away, making several unnecessary turns through town. To confirm his suspicion, the SUV followed at a discreet distance. Rather than lead them to either Michael's cabin or Thunder Basin, Ethan drove directly back to Echo Ridge. Let them think he was returning home. He could lose them in the forest later if necessary. At the ranch, Ethan parked in front of the house and went inside, closing the curtains. Through a gap, he watched the SUV park on the main road, just within sight of the driveway. He gathered supplies, water, energy bars, flashlight, first aid kit, hunting knife, and his grandfather's old revolver, checking that it was loaded. Then he slipped out the back door and circled through the barn to reach the forest's edge unseen. The sun hung low in the western sky, casting long shadows across Echo Ridge. Once in the forest, Ethan moved quickly, following his earlier GPS markers back toward Michael's cabin. A soft nickering stopped him in his tracks. Shadow emerged from between the trees, green eyes luminous even in daylight. The horse approached Ethan without fear, stopping close enough that Ethan could feel its warm breath on his face. They're watching the ranch, Ethan said, feeling foolish for speaking to a horse, yet compelled to explain. Collins knows about Michael. I need to get to his cabin, find what's hidden there. Shadow tossed his head, turned, and began walking deeper into the forest, but not toward Michael's cabin. Instead, the horse chose a different path, heading northeast. No, the cabin's this way, Ethan called softly, pointing in the correct direction. Shadow stopped, looked back at Ethan, and snorted impatiently. When Ethan didn't follow, the horse returned, nudged him firmly in the chest, then resumed its northeasterly course. Ethan hesitated, then fell in behind Shadow. The journal had said to trust the horse when it appeared. If this was truly some kind of spirit guide, perhaps it knew something Ethan didn't. They traveled for over an hour as dusk deepened into night. The forest grew denser, the terrain more challenging. Shadow moved with confidence, despite the darkness occasionally waiting for Ethan to navigate difficult passages. Finally, they emerged onto a ridge overlooking a vast valley. In the distance, lights from scattered ranch houses sparkled against the darkness. Thunder Basin, Ethan realized. Shadow had brought him to the wild horse sanctuary. The horse led him down a barely visible trail that wound through granite outcroppings and scrub pine. As they descended into the valley, Shadow's pace quickened, as if sensing their destination was near. They approached a small isolated cabin nestled against the base of a cliff. Unlike Michael's deteriorating shelter, this one was well maintained, with a metal roof and solar panels visible even in the moonlight. No lights shone from within, but smoke curled from the chimney. Shadow stopped 50 yards from the cabin, ears pricked forward in alert posture. Is Raymond here? Ethan whispered. The horse pawed the ground once, almost like a nod. Ethan approached cautiously, senses heightened for any sign of danger. When he reached the small porch, he listened intently before knocking softly on the door. Silence greeted him. He knocked again, calling quietly. Raymond Hayes. My name is Ethan Calloway. Jack's grandson, Michael Winters, sent me. A sound came from inside a chair scraping against wood. Footsteps approached slowly. A bolt slid back, and the door opened a crack, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. "Prove you're Jack's boy," a gruff voice demanded. "I'm his grandson," Ethan corrected. "I have Michael's key, and I was led here by a black horse with green eyes." The door opened wider. An elderly man stood, revealed rifle held loosely in gnarled hands. Unlike Michael, Raymond Hayes appeared healthy, despite his age, lean and weathered rather than frail, with sharp eyes that evaluated Ethan critically. "Shadow brought you," he said, lowering the rifle slightly. "Just like Jack said would happen someday." "May I come in? We need to talk." Raymond's gaze shifted beyond Ethan to where Shadow waited in the darkness. After a moment's consideration, he stepped back, allowing Ethan entry. The cabin's interior was spare but comfortable, a main room, with a wood stove, kitchen area, and sitting space. A curtained alcove, presumably hiding a bed. Every available wall space held bookshelves crammed with volumes. Raymond gestured to a chair. "Sit. You've come a long way." Ethan remained standing. "Collins knows about Michael. He has men watching Echo Ridge. We don't have much time." Raymond sighed heavily, setting his rifle in a corner. "So it begins. Jack warned me this day would come." He studied Ethan's face. "You've got his eyes, same intensity. Can you be trusted with the truth like he was?" "I've read his journal, parts of it anyway. I know about Quezon, the massacre, the cover-up." "You know what's written. That's not the same as understanding." Raymond moved to a cupboard, removed a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. "Drink. I need clear thoughts right now." Raymond poured himself a generous measure. Sometimes alcohol clarifies what sobriety obscures. He drank, then fixed Ethan with a penetrating stare. "Why are you here, really for justice for your grandfather? Or because Shadow wouldn't let you put a bullet in your brain?" The bluntness of the question struck like a physical blow. "How did you—" "The horse only comes to Callaways who've given up. Jack was the same after your grandmother died. I was there when Shadow appeared to him on Cooper's Ridge, keeping him from the edge." Raymond's expression softened slightly. "What was it for you? Afghanistan, Iraq?" "Afghanistan, IED, my entire unit. I was the only survivor." The words came easier than Ethan expected, perhaps because Raymond wasn't offering sympathy, just understanding. "Survivor's guilt is a cancer," Raymond said. "Eats you from the inside. That's why Shadow comes to give purpose when it's lost. And my purpose is what? Finding your metal box of evidence. Not the box. Truth. Justice. Same thing Jack wanted after Quezon." Raymond finished his whiskey. "The box contains recordings, documents proving Colonel Collins ordered us to fire on that village, despite knowing civilians remained, then orchestrated the cover-up. His son has spent decades ensuring it never surfaces. It would destroy not just his political ambitions, but the family legacy. Why keep it all these years? Why not release it? To what end? Destroying one man's reputation? The real criminals are dead or beyond prosecution. The damage is done." Raymond shook his head. "No, the evidence was leverage insurance to keep the Collins family away from us, from Echo Ridge." "Until now," Ethan said. "Until now," Raymond agreed. "Robert Collins wants Echo Ridge for more than just a resort. The land contains something his father killed to protect." What is before Raymond could answer, a sharp crack echoed outside, a twig snapping under weight. Both men froze. "Expecting someone," Ethan whispered. Raymond shook his head, reaching for his rifle. "No one knows I'm here except—" A woman's voice called from outside. "Raymond, it's Olivia. Frank sent me." Raymond relaxed marginally. "Olivia Bennett, Frank's granddaughter. The vet I mentioned." He opened the door to reveal a woman in her early 30s, with auburn hair pulled back in a practical braid, wearing jeans and a heavy jacket. Her expression was tense. "Someone followed me," she said without preamble. "Black SUV started tailing me outside the clinic. I lost them on the back roads, but they can't be far behind." Raymond cursed. "Collins's men. How did they find you?" "I don't know. I visited Frank this afternoon. Maybe someone overheard us." Raymond's gaze shifted to Ethan. "This is Ethan Calloway, Jack's grandson. Shadow brought him." Olivia's eyes widened, taking in Ethan fully for the first time. "The black horse is real, Frank always said." She shook her head. "Never mind that now. We need to move you, Raymond, tonight. Too late, Raymond said grimly. If they followed you this far, they'll have the valley exits watched. He turned to Ethan. You need to take the evidence. Get it somewhere safe. I'll stay and help, Ethan countered. No, this is what Shadow brought you for, to finish what Jack started. Raymond moved to the wood stove, shifted it aside with surprising strength, and pried up several floorboards. From the space beneath, he removed a metal ammunition box, its olive drab paint faded but intact. Everything's here. Recordings, documents, photographs, coordinates. He handed the box to Ethan. The most damning piece is a map showing what's really beneath Echo Ridge, what the resort is meant to conceal. Ethan took the box, feeling its weight physical and metaphorical. What's beneath the ranch remains, Raymond said quietly. A mass grave from before any of us were born. Native American children killed when the first Callaway claimed that land. Colonel Collins discovered it during a geological survey. In the 60s, realized exposure would prevent mineral rights exploitation. When we returned from Vietnam, damaged and vocal, he saw an opportunity to silence us all at Khe Sanh. The implications staggered Ethan. This wasn't just about one covered-up massacre, but generations of buried truth. The horse, Ethan said slowly, the Hmong elder's words about a black spirit following Jack's bloodline, was no coincidence, Raymond finished. The spiritual leader of the tribe buried at Echo Ridge made the same prophecy when your great-grandfather took their land. A guardian spirit would haunt the Callaway line until justice was done. Headlights suddenly swept across the cabin windows, vehicles approaching. Go, Raymond said urgently. Take the North Trail. It leads to Thunder Basin headquarters. Authorities there can protect you until you decide how to proceed. And you, I'll buy you time. Raymond's expression was resolute. I've been running for 20 years. Perhaps it's time to make a stand. Olivia stepped forward. I'll help Raymond. I know these hills better than Collins's men. Ethan hesitated, torn between the mission and abandoning two people to uncertain fate. A familiar nickering sound came from outside. Through the window, Ethan saw Shadow standing at the tree line, pawing the ground impatiently. Trust the horse, Raymond said, echoing Frank's words. It hasn't led a Callaway wrong yet. Clutching the metal box, Ethan slipped out the back door of the cabin as the first vehicle pulled up in front. Shadow waited, eyes gleaming in the darkness, body tense and ready. As Ethan reached the horse, he heard shouts from the cabin. Raymond's voice raised in defiance, Olivia's in alarm. Gunshots followed the sound, echoing across the valley. Shadow reared slightly, front hooves pawing the air, then turned and galloped away from the cabin. After a moment's hesitation, Ethan followed the metal box clutched against his chest, its contents possibly more dangerous than the bullets being fired behind him. They ran through the darkness, Shadow leading Ethan, following the sounds of pursuit growing distant. The horse chose paths invisible to human eyes, winding through rock formations and dense underbrush that would stymie vehicles. Another shot rang out closer this time. Someone on foot had followed them. Ethan felt a burning across his side as the bullet grazed him. He stumbled but kept moving, adrenaline masking the pain. Shadow stopped abruptly, looking back at Ethan. In the moonlight, the horse's green eyes seemed to glow with unnatural intensity. It approached Ethan, nudging him toward a narrow crevice in the rock face. Understanding, Ethan squeezed into the hidden space, finding it opened into a small cave. Shadow remained outside, visible through the narrow opening. Come on, Ethan urged, suddenly fearful for the horse. Shadow tossed his head, then turned and galloped away from the hiding place, drawing pursuit deliberately, Ethan realized with shock. More shots echoed through the night, followed by immense shouts of triumph. Got it! The horse is down! Ethan's heart contracted painfully. He started to move toward the cave entrance, then froze as flashlight beams swept nearby. Where's Callaway? A voice demanded. The box must be with him. He can't have gone far. Spread out, check every crevice. Ethan pressed deeper into the cave, mind racing. Shadow had sacrificed itself to protect him, a concept both irrational and somehow fitting if the horse was truly the guardian spirit Raymond and the others believed. The wound in his side throbbed blood-warm and sticky beneath his jacket. He needed to move to get the evidence to safety, but the men outside would spot him immediately. As if in answer to his dilemma, a distant whinnying echoed across the valley. Shadow, somehow still alive, drawing attention away from Ethan's hiding place. The flashlights turned away. There, the ridge. Footsteps receded as the men pursued the sound. Ethan waited until silence returned, then cautiously emerged from the cave. No sign of his pursuers. No sign of Shadow either. With the metal box secured in his jacket, Ethan oriented himself using the stars and set off toward the distant lights of Thunder Basin headquarters, each step both an escape and a reckoning with truths buried across generations. The wound in his side leaked a steady trail of blood behind him, marking his path through the wilderness like a confession written in red. Retry N. Okay, next part 3. Edit. The lights of Thunder Basin headquarters grew tantalizingly close, then impossibly distant as Ethan's strength ebbed. Blood loss and exhaustion took their toll, turning the final mile into an exercise in pure will. One foot before the other. Again. Again. The metal box weighed heavy against his ribs, its contents burning like fire in his consciousness. 2 massacres. Multiple cover-ups. Generations of buried truth. He stumbled, caught himself against a juniper tree, leaving a dark handprint on its trunk. The wound wouldn't stop bleeding, a constant warm trickle down his side that sapped his strength with each passing minute. Shadow was gone. The thought hit Ethan with unexpected force. The mysterious horse had saved him twice now, perhaps at the cost of its own life. "Keep moving," he muttered to himself, pushing away from the tree. His vision blurred, dark edges encroaching. The distant light smeared into golden streaks against the night sky. Ethan took another step, then another, counting each one to maintain focus. He didn't hear the vehicle approach until headlights suddenly illuminated him from behind. Ethan turned, raising an arm to shield his eyes, his other hand reaching for the revolver at his waistband. "Ethan Calloway," a woman's voice called. He squinted into the light, unable to see beyond the glare. "Who's asking?" The headlights dimmed. A figure approached cautiously, female, athletic build, shotgun held at low ready. As she drew closer, he recognized Olivia Bennett from Raymond's cabin. "You're hit," she said, noticing his blood-soaked shirt. "Grazing wound. I'll live." Ethan lowered his hand from the revolver. "Raymond." Her expression tightened. "They took him. I managed to escape when more people arrived at the cabin. Someone called in the gunshots. Collins's men. Gone before sheriff's deputies arrived. We need to get you to a hospital." Ethan shook his head. "No hospitals. Collins will have them watched." He patted his jacket where the metal box was secured. "Got what they're after right here." "My clinic, then. I can treat that wound, and it's the last place they'll look." Too exhausted to argue, Ethan allowed Olivia to help him into her truck. As they drove toward town, he fought to stay conscious, focusing on the road ahead rather than the pain in his side. "Shadow," he said suddenly. "The black horse, they shot at it." Olivia glanced at him, concerned. "I didn't see any horse, Ethan. It was there. Led me to the cave. Drew them away. We'll look for it tomorrow." She promised, her tone suggesting she was humoring him. "For now, let's focus on keeping you alive." Thunder Basin Wild Horse Veterinary Clinic sat on the outskirts of Unity Valley, a low purpose-built structure surrounded by paddocks and outbuildings. Olivia drove past the main entrance to a rear service door, helping Ethan inside once she confirmed the building was empty. The examination room was designed for horses, not humans, but the principles of wound care remained the same. Ethan sat on a stool, removing his jacket and shirt to reveal the bullet's path across his ribs, a deep furrow that bled freely but hadn't penetrated his chest cavity. "You're lucky," Olivia said, cleaning the wound with professional efficiency. "Half an inch deeper and we'd be having a very different conversation." Ethan placed the metal box on the exam table beside him. "Raymond said this contains evidence of what's beneath Echo Ridge, a Native American mass grave." Olivia's hands paused briefly. "That tracks with family stories my grandfather told. Supposedly, the original settlers in this valley encountered a tribe that refused to leave their sacred lands. The official history says they were relocated peacefully. Odd official history has a way of sanitizing uncomfortable truths," Ethan replied. "Like what happened in Quezon?" she asked quietly, resuming her work. "You know about that, bits and pieces. Grandfather never discussed it directly, but I've pieced things together over the years." She applied antiseptic that stung like fire. "Sorry, this needs stitches." While Olivia prepared suture materials, Ethan opened the metal box. Inside lay carefully preserved items, reel-to-reel audio tapes, photographs in protective sleeves, military documents, and a folded topographical map that yellowed with age. He unfolded the map carefully. It showed Echo Ridge and surrounding lands with handwritten notations marking a specific area near the northwestern boundary of the property, excavation site A, and remains confirmed. Official-looking documents beneath the map detailed a geological survey from 1963 with Colonel James Collins' signature authorizing its classification. One passage stood out: discovery of Native American remains at Site A necessitates immediate security protocols. Mineral deposits in same location estimated at $30–50 million value. Recommend acquisition of surrounding properties and controlled development to prevent archaeological investigation. Olivia returned with suturing equipment. Find something? Confirmation, Ethan said, showing her the documents. Collins's father discovered the grave while searching for minerals. Instead of reporting it, he buried the discovery literally and figuratively, and now his son wants to build a resort over it before anyone else can find it. Olivia concluded, beginning to stitch Ethan's wound. But why target your grandfather and his friends specifically? The massacre in Vietnam happened after this survey. Raymond thinks it was connected. My grandfather and his unit returned from Vietnam traumatized and vocal about military cover-ups. Collins saw them as a threat to his own secret. Ethan winced as the needle pierced his skin. The Khe Sanh massacre was a way to compromise them, make them complicit in something terrible, so they'd never dare expose him. That's monstrous. War brings out the worst in some men, Ethan said quietly, and the best in others. My grandfather carried that guilt to his grave, tried to atone in 1,000 small ways. As Olivia finished stitching and bandaging his side, Ethan examined more items from the box. Among them was a small leather pouch containing what appeared to be a carved stone amulet, a horse rendered in black stone with tiny green crystals for eyes. "What's that?" Olivia asked, noticing his interest. "Not sure." He turned the amulet over. Symbols were etched on the reverse side, nothing he recognized. "May I?" She took it carefully, studying the markings. "These look like Arapaho symbols. My clinic works with the Wind River Reservation. Sometimes their cultural preservation officer might recognize this." Ethan returned the amulet to its pouch, a strange certainty forming in his mind. "I think this is connected to Shadow, the black horse, that's been appearing to my family for generations." Olivia's expression remained carefully neutral. Frank mentioned a black horse in his more confused moments. "I always thought it was just another hallucination." "It's real as anything I've ever seen." Ethan met her gaze steadily. "It stopped me from killing myself twice, led me to Michael, then to Raymond, and tonight it sacrificed itself to save me." Something in his tone must have convinced her, because she didn't dismiss him outright. If this horse is some kind of guardian spirit," she said instead, "why appear to your family specifically?" "Raymond said a tribal elder made a prophecy when my great-grandfather took their land that a black spirit horse would haunt the Callaway line until justice was done." Ethan closed the metal box. "I think that's why my grandfather couldn't sell Echo Ridge, why he was so determined I should inherit it. He understood the debt our family owed. Sonia, now I need to fulfill that debt, get this evidence to the proper authorities, ensure both massacres are acknowledged." Olivia finished securing the bandage. "Collins won't go down without a fight. He has the sheriff in his pocket connections at the state level, and Raymond is still his prisoner. Then I'll need leverage." Ethan stood carefully, testing his injured side. "Something Collins wants badly enough to negotiate." "The box," she suggested. "No, me." Ethan's expression hardened. "I'm going to offer myself in exchange for Raymond. Once he's safe, we'll release everything, the Khe Sanh recordings, the survey documents, all of it." "That's suicide," Olivia protested. "Collins will kill you both once he has the evidence." "Not if we create insurance first." Ethan gathered the box. "I need a camera, computer, internet access, and I need to get to Michael at the hospital. You're in no condition. I've functioned with worse in Afghanistan." He met her concerned gaze. "Will you help me?" After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. "My office has what you need, but I'm coming with you to the hospital. Collins's men will be watching it. I know ways to enter unseen, staff entrance codes, advantages of treating the pets of half the hospital administrators in town." While Ethan digitized the key documents and recordings using Olivia's office equipment, she arranged for a change of clothing scrubs that would help him blend in at the hospital. He created encrypted files, uploaded them to multiple secure servers with timed release protocols. If I don't enter a cancellation code every 12 hours, he explained, everything goes public automatically to newspapers, FBI state authorities, tribal councils, everyone. Digital dead man's switch. Clever. Often a standard insurgency tactic, ironically. Ethan finished the final upload. Insurance activated. Dawn was breaking as they approached Mercy Hospital through a service entrance. Olivia's access card admitted them to a maintenance corridor, bypassing the main lobby where Colin's men likely watched. Michael's room was in the ICU, monitored by nurses at a central station. Olivia created a distraction, a convincing display of a distraught pet owner, seeking the doctor who had treated her dog, while Ethan slipped past in scrubs, clipboard in hand. Michael appeared even worse than before, skin gray against white sheets, breathing labored despite the oxygen mask. Machines beeped softly, monitoring vital signs that seemed to weaken by the hour. Ethan approached the bed, touched Michael's arm gently. "Michael, it's Ethan." The old man's eyes fluttered open, taking several seconds to focus. Recognition gradually dawned. "You found Raymond," he whispered, voice barely audible beneath the mask. "Yes, and the box. I know everything now about Kaysan, about what's beneath Echo Ridge." Relief washed across Michael's features. Jack would be proud. His gaze sharpened suddenly. "Collins. Took Raymond captive last night. I'm going to get him back." Michael's hand emerged from beneath the blanket, gripping Ethan's wrist with surprising strength. "Be careful. Collins has government connections, military contractors. I've created insurance, digital files set to release automatically." Ethan leaned closer. "The horse shadow. It led me to everything just like the journal said. But Collins's men shot it last night." Pain that had nothing to do with physical illness crossed Michael's face. "Shadow can't be killed. Not permanently. Spirit returns. When needed most." Ethan wasn't sure if this was delirium or genuine belief, but he nodded anyway. "Rest now. When you're stronger, I'll take you to Echo Ridge, just like my grandfather wanted." A ghost of a smile appeared beneath the oxygen mask. "Home," Michael whispered. "Been so long." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Sir, this patient isn't supposed to have visitors without authorization. Anitum. Just checking his vitals," Ethan replied, adopting a professional tone. "Dr. Bennett asked me to monitor his respiratory rate." The nurse frowned. "Dr. Bennett isn't on ICU rotation." "My mistake. Must have misheard." Ethan moved toward the door, squeezing Michael's hand once before leaving. "I'll be back soon." In the hall, the nurse watched him suspiciously, but didn't follow as Ethan walked confidently toward the service elevator. He rejoined Olivia at her truck 5 minutes later. "How is he?" she asked as they drove away. "Dying," Ethan said bluntly. "But holding on. He deserves to see this through to the end." "What now?" "Now I call Collins, offer a trade me and the evidence for Raymond." Olivia glanced at him. "And then what, you're just going to sacrifice yourself?" "No, I'm going to finish what my grandfather started." Ethan gazed out the window at Unity Valley, awakening for the day, citizens unaware of the decades of lies beneath their feet. There's a Veterans Day memorial service tomorrow at the town park. Collins will be there playing the patriotic mayor. It's the perfect venue for truth. "If you live that long, one problem at a time," Ethan replied grimly. From a burner phone purchased at a gas station outside town, Ethan called Collins' office. Despite the early hour, the mayor answered personally. "Mr. Calloway," Collins said smoothly, "I've been hoping to speak with you. You have Raymond Hayes. I have the evidence your father buried. Let's arrange an exchange." A pause. "I'm not sure what you're referring to." "Cut the act, Collins. Your men shot at me last night after raiding Raymond's cabin. I know about Kisan. I know about the graves beneath Echo Ridge, and I've ensured the evidence will go public unless I prevent it." The pretense dropped from Collins' voice. "You sound like your grandfather's self-righteous, misguided about things you don't understand." "I understand plenty. Site A, the mineral surveys, the classified reports with your father's signature ordering the cover-up." Another pause, longer this time. "Perhaps we should meet. Discuss this like reasonable men." "Echo Ridge, noon today. Bring Raymond unharmed. I'll bring the metal box and deactivate the digital failsafe. You're in no position to dictate terms, Mr. Calloway. Check your email in 2 minutes. You'll receive a sample of what goes public if anything happens to me or Raymond. Ethan ended the call nodding to Olivia, who hit send on a carefully selected document, a photograph showing Colonel Collins at Khe Sanh with Jack's unit dated 1 day before the massacre. Will he agree? Olivia asked. He'll come, Ethan confirmed. Whether he honors the deal is another matter. You need backup. Let me call some friends from the reservation. Men I trust. Ethan shook his head. Too risky. Collins will have his own people watching. One hint of an ambush and Raymond is dead. He checked his grandfather's revolver. This plays out between Collins and me, the way it was always meant to. Olivia's expression hardened. I'm coming with you. No. I need you to take the digital evidence to Frank. Tell him everything. If this goes wrong, he'll know what to do. She wanted to argue, he could see it in her eyes, but finally nodded. Fine, but I'm coming to Echo Ridge after I see Frank. You shouldn't face this alone. I won't be, Ethan said, thinking of Shadow. Even gone, the horse's presence lingered a guardian spirit that had guided him this far. Echo Ridge looked different to Ethan now, as he approached at midday. Not just a dilapidated ranch, but sacred ground, a place of unmarked graves and unacknowledged history. He parked in front of the house, the metal box under his arm, and waited. Precisely at noon, 3 black SUVs turned onto the long driveway gravel, crunching beneath their tires as they approached. They parked in a semicircle, blocking any potential escape by vehicle. Mayor Collins emerged from the middle SUV, immaculately dressed in a suit that cost more than most Unity Valley residents earned in a month. 4 men flanked him, private security rather than local police, their weapons concealed but present. From the third vehicle, 2 more men roughly extracted Raymond Hayes, his hands bound behind him, a bruise darkening one side of his face. Mr. Calloway, Collins called, walking forward, I believe you have something that belongs to me. It doesn't belong to you, Ethan replied. It belongs to history, to the truth. Truth is malleable, son. It's whatever those in power say it is. Collins gestured to one of his men who pushed Raymond forward. I've fulfilled my part. Your turn. Release him first. Collins smiled thinly. That's not how this works. The box, then Hayes goes free. Ethan hesitated, calculating odds that grew worse by the second. Even with the digital insurance, there was nothing preventing Collins from killing them both once he had the physical evidence. A soft nickering broke the tense silence. All heads turned toward the forest's edge where a black horse stood watching, coat gleaming in the midday sun, white lightning marks stark against its forehead, green eyes unnervingly intelligent. Shadow! Raymond breathed hope dawning on his battered face. Collins frowned. What is this, some kind of distraction? The horse pawed the ground, once then charged directly at Collins's men. They scattered in confusion, reaching for weapons. Don't shoot it. Atsonerum! Collins shouted, but one man fired anyway. The bullet seemed to pass through Shadow without effect. The horse continued its charge, separating Collins from his security team. Ethan seized the moment, rushing to Raymond's side, using his knife to cut the bindings. Run, he ordered. Get to the house. Raymond needed no further urging, sprinting toward the porch with surprising speed for his age. 2 of Collins's men moved to intercept, but Shadow veered toward them, rearing up with hooves flashing in the sunlight. They scrambled backwards, superstitious fear evident in their expressions. Collins himself stood frozen, watching the impossible horse with wide eyes. What the hell is that thing? Justice, Ethan answered, the metal box still clutched under his arm. The spirit your father and you tried to bury along with those bodies. For a moment, the mayor's composed facade cracked, revealing naked fear beneath. Then his training reasserted itself. He pulled a pistol from inside his jacket, aiming not at Ethan or Shadow, but toward Raymond on the porch. The box, Collins demanded, or the old man dies right now. Shadow reared again, hooves striking out, but even supernatural horses couldn't stop bullets. Ethan placed himself between the gun and Raymond. Kill him and everything goes public in 12 hours. Kill me, same result. Then I'll take my chances with the evidence, Collins replied coldly. Better than certain ruin. His finger tightened on the trigger. A gunshot cracked across the yard, but not from Collins's weapon. The mayor cried out, his pistol falling as blood blossomed on his shoulder. Olivia Bennett stepped from behind one of the SUVs, her grandfather's service pistol steady in her hands. "That's enough," she said calmly. "The next one won't be a warning." Collins's security team, already unnerved by Shadow's impossible presence, found themselves suddenly outflanked. From the tree line emerged several Native American men armed with hunting rifles, Olivia's friends from the reservation positioned, while Ethan kept Collins distracted. "Did you really think I'd leave you to face this alone?" Olivia asked Ethan. Before he could answer, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. More vehicles appeared on the driveway, sheriff's department cruisers, but also unfamiliar government sedans. Sheriff Davis emerged from the lead vehicle, looking confused by the standoff he'd encountered. Behind him came a woman in a dark suit, her bearing unmistakably federal. "FBI," she announced, displaying credentials. "Special Agent Monroe. We received some very interesting files this morning regarding Colonel James Collins, Mayor Robert Collins, and potential civil rights violations spanning 5 decades. Ethan shot a questioning look at Olivia, who shrugged innocently. "I might have accelerated your fail-safe timer," she admitted. Frank agreed it was necessary. Collins, clutching his wounded shoulder, glared at Ethan. "You'll regret this, Calloway. My family built this town. We have connections you can't imagine." "Your family built this town on stolen land and buried bodies," Ethan replied. "That ends today." As FBI agents took control of the scene, separating Collins from his security team and beginning to collect statements, Shadow approached Ethan. The horse moved with deliberate grace, stopping close enough that Ethan could feel its warm breath. "I thought they shot you," Ethan said softly. Shadow nickered gently, pressing its muzzle against Ethan's chest, directly over his heart. For a moment something passed between them, understanding perhaps, or something deeper. The horse's green eyes held wisdom beyond nature, a connection that transcended explanation. Then Shadow turned, trotting toward Raymond, who stood watching from the porch. The old man extended a trembling hand which the horse nuzzled briefly before continuing on toward the forest. At the tree line, Shadow paused, looking back at Ethan one final time. The horse reared up on its hind legs, silhouetted against the trees, a powerful image of wild freedom. Then it was gone, disappearing into the shadows from which it had emerged. "Will it come back?" Olivia asked, joining Ethan. "When needed," he replied, echoing Michael's words. "The spirit returns when needed most." The days that followed unfolded with dizzying speed. FBI investigators descended on Unity Valley, excavating Site A at Echo Ridge, where ground-penetrating radar confirmed what Colonel Collins had discovered decades earlier, a mass grave containing the remains of at least 47 individuals, mostly women and children. Tribal representatives from the Northern Arapaho Nation came to oversee proper reburial ceremonies. Elders identified the carved amulet from Raymond's box as a sacred object belonging to their last great spiritual leader. Before their removal from the valley, the same leader who had allegedly prophesied that justice would someday come on 4 black hooves. Mayor Collins was arrested, charged with multiple federal crimes, including obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and civil rights violations. His private security team, faced with their own legal jeopardy, quickly turned on him, revealing a complex web of corruption extending to state government. The Khe Sanh massacre finally received official acknowledgement. While most directly responsible parties were deceased, the military issued a formal apology to the Vietnamese government and the families of victims. Michael Winters, against all medical predictions, rallied enough to be released from the hospital. True to his promise, Ethan brought him home to Echo Ridge, converting the ranch's guest room into a comfortable space where the old man could spend his remaining days. Frank Morgan experienced a period of remarkable mental clarity upon learning the truth had finally emerged. He moved from Valley View to Echo Ridge as well, the 3 surviving members of Jack's unit reunited at last. Raymond Hayes, free from decades of hiding, dedicated himself to cataloging and preserving the full historical record of both atrocities. His meticulous documentation would eventually form the core of a memorial museum established on a portion of Echo Ridge land. As for Ethan, the nightmares didn't vanish overnight. The faces of his lost unit still visited him in dreams. But something had shifted, a purpose, found a direction established. The crushing weight of survivors' guilt began to lighten as he channeled his energy into healing the ranch and its legacy. On a crisp morning, 6 months after the confrontation with Collins, Ethan stood on the porch of the newly repaired main house, coffee mug in hand, watching the sun rise over Echo Ridge. The property had transformed fences, mended barn restored, fresh paint gleaming white against the Wyoming sky. Olivia's truck appeared on the driveway, a familiar sight now. Their relationship had evolved gradually from allies to friends to something deeper neither had yet fully named. She understood his damaged parts because she carried her own, the legacy of a grandfather who had participated in atrocities, then spent decades atoning. She parked beside the house and joined him on the porch, accepting the coffee he offered. "Big day," she observed. Ethan nodded. The official dedication ceremony for the Echo Ridge Healing Center would take place that afternoon, a joint project between the Callaway Foundation and the Northern Arapaho Nation, transforming the ranch into a treatment facility for veterans with PTSD and a cultural heritage site honoring the graves discovered there. "Nervous?" she asked. "A little," he admitted. "Public speaking isn't my strong suit. Just speak from the heart. That's what matters." They stood in comfortable silence watching the morning light spread across the land. In the distance near the newly constructed memorial circle, a solitary figure appeared, a young veteran who had arrived early for the ceremony. He sat alone on a bench, head bowed, the posture of a man carrying invisible wounds. Something moved at the forest edge. A black horse emerged from the tree's coat, gleaming in the morning light. White lightning mark vivid against its forehead, green eyes luminous even at a distance. "Shadow," Ethan whispered. The horse approached the seated veteran, slowly, cautiously. The man looked up, startled by the unexpected visitor. For a long moment, horse and human regarded each other, a silent communication passing between them. "Should we intervene?" Olivia asked. Ethan shook his head. "No, this is how it begins." "How it begins?" "Healing," he replied simply. "Shadow has chosen again." They watched as the veteran hesitantly extended his hand. Shadow gently pressed his muzzle against the man's palm, the first connection, the first step on a journey Ethan knew intimately. The spirit returns when needed most. Ethan said his grandfather's words, finally making perfect sense. Echo Ridge had come full circle, from a place of buried secrets to a sanctuary for damaged souls. The guardian spirit that had saved generations of Callaways now extended its protection to others who carried similar burdens. Ethan slipped his arm around Olivia's waist, feeling gratitude deeper than any he'd known before. For Shadow, for his grandfather's legacy, for second chances that came disguised as black horses with impossible green eyes. In the distance, the veteran rose from the bench. Shadow turned toward the memorial circle, took several steps, then looked back expectantly. After a moment's hesitation, the man followed. "Trust the horse," Ethan murmured. "It knows the way home." As the sun sets over Echo Ridge, Healing Center Shadow's silhouette can sometimes be seen at the forest's edge, watching over broken warriors finding their way back from darkness. The mysterious horse that saved Ethan Callaway now chooses others who need its guidance, a living bridge between past wounds and future healing. Some call it a spirit, others a miracle, but those who've looked into those impossible green eyes understand its true nature, a reminder that we're never truly alone in our darkest hours. Perhaps in your own life there exists a guardian waiting to appear when needed most, a connection to something greater than ourselves that guides us home when we've lost our way. If this story touched your heart, we've saved 2 more extraordinary tales that await your discovery. Stories of redemption and second chances that remind us why life, despite its pain, is always worth living. Just click on your screen now to continue the journey. Thank you for spending this time with us at Echo Ridge. Until our paths cross again, may your spirit, like Shadow's, remain untamed and free.